from the original research. And all the red are things that I added, which are the in vivo measurements. So we have data coming from 3 sources in each one of the variables. Human motivation test or questionnaire. Motivation in teaching is also a questionnaire that I composed for this to ask them what motivates them to use humor in class, and student evaluation of the motivation of the teacher. The same here, cognition. There was the human cognition test by Feynman and Mazella, and observation on humor clue, and student evaluation of the cognition of the teacher. And here the communication, willing to communicate, the original two, in vitro, lessons of observation on communication, body parts and changing in intonation, and student evaluation for the communication of the teacher. We also use the Big 5 inventory personality traits, the Big 5, to find what human trait connected with humor creation. And here is the way we measure humor creation. Lessons of observation, evaluation of judges, cartoon titles, humor questionnaire, petit test, those are the in vitro that I showed you at the beginning, and student evaluation of the humor creation of the teacher. So now, as a summary, 34 teachers were the sample of the participating in the research from 8 colleges and universities in Israel. Were teaching 91 lessons. Each teacher, almost 3 lessons for each teacher, 70 subjects, 735 humor episodes were taken from those lessons, and 1,530 students were filling the form from the students' side of it. So now for the results. Nobody is laughing, don't you see what the results of K300. Okay, so here is we made few statistic things. Correlation, the in vivo measurements. We see that only motivation is a significant correlation with humor creation. In the in vitro measurements, meaning the filling ups form and humor tests. So this will lead us to something else later on. When we look at the correlation of the in vivo measurements, here are the students and here are the judges, the observation, the judges' decision. We see that almost everything is correlated, and it's not high correlated, it's a kind of medium-sized correlated, meaning that each one of them has something to contribute to humor creation. It's not exactly the same thing. So everyone has his own view. And I marked those because humor communication is higher in correlation with all the measurements that came from the judges. On the other hand, humor cognition is higher here with all the measurements that came from the students. So when we continue and did regression, no, before that, here are the correlation between the in vitro and the in vivo, judges, students. So we also see there is correlation, human creation test, with almost all the variables of the in vivo. Means there is some connection, like a person who will create humor titles or humor in cartoons, has humor, but it's not a high correlation. Means that when you do in vivo, it gives something else to the humor. Humor is not one thing. It means that we should take it from different aspects. So, okay, so we did a regression, and what we found in the regression is that when we take the teachers, data that came from the teachers, the motivation predicts humor creation. When we take the data from the judges, the observation, the cognition predicts. The judges were looking for every humor episode by itself. They were not in a class. They didn't see all the context. So they see that the cognition part of the humor was probably more important for them, and that's what predicts. When we look at the students were watching the teacher in a class and filled it up after the class. So they look as a whole, as a teacher, movement, speech, intonation changing, and so all that. And the communication part of this model is the most significant, most predictive one. So with that, we went to do Amos' path analysis. And we see, I didn't talk much about the humor trait, but we took the motivation, cognition, communication as mediate to the personal trait. When we did the Amos, we stayed with two those two, agreeableness and extroversion, were those who were most connected with all the rest of the model. So this is the in vitro, means everything influences human creation, but there's less communication between, like motivation and communication is connected, like in Feinberg and Mazella, the study before, but there's no connection between cognition and communication, as you see. So we have, this is the model that we did with the observation with the judges. So here we see that there is a connection between motivation, cognition, and communication, one after the other, and the loading of the cognition is the highest. Those are the judges. And the motivation, cognition, and communication are mediating for agreeableness, and extroversion also has direct influence on human creation, but also goes through motivation and cognition. And the best model, as I see, is the student one. Now, if you're familiar with Amos, you need to have many participants to have a big model that will take all three of them in consideration. Because we didn't have so many participants, we divided this Amos model to three different models. So you see the motivation is connected to cognition and communication, and motivation and communication is connected also. And those three are the mediate to humor, to personality trait, and the most influential or loading is of communication to human creation, and this is from the students. So with all those data, I came with a new model. If somebody wants to make a research on it, is welcome. Those things we came out of my study. One thing, you take in consideration human creator and human receiver. We cannot take only self-report. We have to have somebody else, because humor is a social thing, and there is always a connection between, and we heard it on the previous talks, between receiver and creator. The creator gives to the model the motivation, as we saw before, and the personality trait. And the receiver, the cognition and the communication, and the both have an instance relationship coming and going. So this is it, and I'm finished. Okay, thank you very much.
We have some questions. Is there a language difference in communications for humor? Like, for example, if you tell the same story in English and in